1066, a year that changed the course of English history forever. The Norman Conquest, led by William the Conqueror, reshaped England's culture, language, and monarchy. But what if it had failed? What if Harold Godwinson's Anglo-Saxon forces had triumphed at the Battle of Hastings? Join us as we explore an alternate history where the Norman invasion of England never succeeded. To understand the stakes, let's set the stage. In 1066, England was a kingdom in turmoil. King Edward the Confessor had died without a clear heir, leaving a power vacuum. Harold Godwinson, an Anglo-Saxon noble, claimed the throne, but across the English Channel, William, Duke of Normandy, believed he was the rightful king. William claimed that Edward had promised him the throne and that Harold had sworn an oath to support his claim. What followed was one of the most famous battles in history, the Battle of Hastings. But before we dive into the battle itself, let's take a closer look at the key players. Harold Godwinson was a seasoned warrior and a skilled leader. He had just defeated another claimant to the throne, Harald Hardrada of Norway, at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. His army was tired but battle-hardened. William, on the other hand, was a cunning and ambitious leader. He had spent years preparing for this invasion, gathering a formidable army of knights, archers, and infantry. On that fateful day, October 14, 1066, William's Norman forces faced Harold's Anglo-Saxon army on Senlac Hill. Near Hastings, the Normans had cavalry and archers, while the English relied on their shield wall formation. The battle was fierce and lasted all day. The English shield wall was a formidable defense, but the Normans used feigned retreats to break their formation. The feigned retreat was a risky tactic, but it worked. The English soldiers, thinking the Normans were fleeing, broke their formation to pursue them. This left them vulnerable to counterattacks. It was a turning point in the battle. But what if Harold's forces had held the line? What if William had fallen in battle? Let's imagine an alternate scenario where the Normans are defeated. Perhaps Harold's army manages to repel the feigned retreats. Or maybe William is struck down by an arrow early in the battle. Without their leader, the Norman forces might have faltered and retreated in this alternate timeline. Harold Godwinson emerges victorious. The Norman threat is neutralized, and England remains an Anglo-Saxon kingdom. But what would this mean for the future of England in Europe? In this alternate timeline, England remains firmly Anglo-Saxon. The English language retains its Old English roots, with fewer French and Latin influences. Words like beef, castle, and justice might never have entered the English vocabulary. Instead, we might be using Old English words like cu for cow, burh for fortress, and dom for judgment. Without Norman castles dotting the landscape, England's architecture would look vastly different. The grand stone castles like the Tower of London might never have been built. Instead, England might have continued to build wooden fortifications and traditional Anglo-Saxon halls. The feudal system, introduced by the Normans, might not have taken hold. Anglo-Saxon society was more communal and less hierarchical. This could have led to a more decentralized government, with power spread among local lords rather than concentrated in the hands of a king. Religion might also have taken a different path. The Normans brought with them a closer connection to the Roman Catholic Church. Without their influence, the English Church might have remained more independent, potentially leading to earlier reforms or even a different relationship with the papacy. Economically, England might have developed differently. The Normans introduced new agricultural practices and a more centralized economy. Without them, England might have remained a more agrarian society, with less emphasis on trade and urbanization. The failure of the Norman invasion would have ripple effects across Europe. Without Norman kings, England might not have become embroiled in centuries of conflict with France. The 100 Years' War, for example, might never have happened. England's relationship with the rest of Europe would have been fundamentally different. The Norman conquest tied England to continental affairs. Without it, England might have remained more isolated, focusing on its own internal development rather than engaging in European politics. This could have led to a very different balance of power in Europe. Scotland and Ireland might also have been affected. The Normans played a significant role in the history of both countries. Without their influence, the relationships between England, Scotland, and Ireland might have developed differently, potentially leading to a more united or more divided British Isles. Even the Americas might have been impacted. The Norman conquest set the stage for the development of the English state, which eventually led to the colonization of the New World. Without the Normans, the timeline and nature of English colonization might have been very different. Let's delve deeper into the cultural and social impact of a failed Norman invasion. Anglo-Saxon culture was rich and vibrant, with its own traditions, art, and literature. Without the Norman influence, English literature might have continued to develop along its own lines, potentially preserving more of its old English roots. Works like Beowulf might have been the foundation of a distinctly English literary tradition, rather than being overshadowed by the French-influenced literature of the Middle Ages. The English language itself might have remained more Germanic, with fewer Romance influences. Socially, the class structure of England might have been less rigid. The Normans introduced a strict feudal hierarchy, with a clear distinction between the nobility and the peasantry. In an Anglo-Saxon England, society might have been more egalitarian, with greater social mobility. Even the legal system might have been different. The Normans brought with them new legal concepts and practices. Without them, English common law might have developed along different lines, potentially leading to a more decentralized and community-based legal system. The Norman conquest shaped England in ways we can still see today. But in this alternate history, England's path diverged, creating a world that might have been. What do you think? Would England be better off? Or did the Norman conquest bring progress? Let us know in the comments below.